how has our past had an effect and how can we go forward into the future? So we're going to go back 400 or 500 years to look at how we changed the way we started to think. And what we're looking at is where science, the mechanical brain, started to become much more active than the intuitive brain. If we go back and look at our ancestors, and it doesn't matter where you come from on this planet, our ancestors were all pagans. There were people who were totally, pagan means person of the country. And so we were people of the country. We had to be able to be in tune with the country in order for us to be able to live. We had to understand the rhythms and the cycles. We had to work with, not against, in order to be able to live our daily lives. That all changed around about the 16th century when people like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, a little bit later, Sir Isaac Newton, they brought in science. They started using the mechanical brain. Now, what we've done is in the last 100 years is we have gone really mechanical brain. And our intuitive brain has become kind of obsolete. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people. And so we need to look at how can we bring the balance back in so we're using our intuition as well as our mechanical brain, the scientific brain. And so regeneration, regenerative agriculture is by looking at how do we regenerate what was once. How do we do that but take it to the future, not take it back into the past as it was. We've got to look at how can we make this a future for generations to come. With modern technology and with all the wisdom of the past. We can't go back to the dark ages, though some people would love to. They think it would be an easier, simpler life, for sure. Now we have to take the wisdom that we learned then to create a future where we have the balance between the intuitive and the mechanical. So a few years ago, the real buzzword was sustainability. We've got to be sustainable. What does that mean? To sustain. It means to keep it the same. If you've got a chemical farmer who does his chemical farming, he is sustaining the way he's doing. If you've got an organic farmer who's doing what he does, he is sustaining the way he's doing. Do we want that, or do we want to take it on a new journey? Regeneration, is that it? When you put the prefix of re in front of something, what does that mean? Redo, revamp. Does it mean we're taking something and doing it up to make it better? This is what we have to think about. What is the journey that we want to go on? For me, I call it about having the tools that you need in order to be able to be creative. And this doesn't matter whether you're an artist, a farmer, a surgeon, or whatever. You need to have tools in order to be able to do what you want to do to create the best outcome. Now those tools will vary depending on what the outcome is you're trying to create and what profession you're in. So I'm talking about in farming, in growing food, and growing people too. Because so often in this regenerative movement, I never hear anything talked about people. It's about how can we regenerate the soil? How can we regenerate the landscapes? Grow more trees, grow fruit. But I don't hear anyone talking about how do we regrow people? How do we get farmers to be regenerated themselves? Now, when I say farmers, I mean anybody. But I'm talking about farming today because we're talking about regenerative farming. So we've got to look at how do we do that? So I call it toolbox farming. You know, if you're a carpenter, you have a tool bag or toolbox. And you've got tools in there, and you learn how to use those tools in order to be creative with whatever you're building. If you're a surgeon, you have all your surgical instruments, and you use those in order to create miracles. So that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to create miracles within whatever we do. So every day, you can go out there and say, I'm going to create something special. Every day. So, in my toolbox, I say, well, what tools do I have in my toolbox? The first one is, it's all about the soil. So my tool is to learn, as a farmer and grower of food, is to learn all I possibly can about the soil. How does the soil work? How was the soil created? How can I build soil? This is all possibilities. When you look in your toolbox, that's just a bag full of possibilities of what you can create by using these tools in the way that they need to be used. So for me, this is number one, because everything comes from the soil. When you go to a farm and say, what's your biggest asset on the farm? And they look around and you go, oh, probably the header. You know, that cost me $400,000. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. But it's not your biggest asset. They go, really? I said, you're standing on it. Your biggest asset is your soil. And we treat it like dirt. So we need to look at how do we treat our soil with reverence and gratitude. Because everything comes from the soil. And where do we go when we finish with all this bag of minerals that's standing here yakking at you? Where does it go? Back to Mother Earth, where we just borrowed it for a short while. We have to understand how the soil works. We have to understand all the cycles. That's part of this tool. It's for me to go and learn through experience, through going to school, lectures, talking to people, most of all getting out in the paddock and getting ready to feel what that is. So for that, then I look at my next tool, it's about holistic, the whole picture. Now this is not the way you normally see it spelled. Normally you don't see it with a W. But as far as I know, whole, most things fall through a hole. And I don't want to fall through a hole, I want to be able to capture the whole picture. So when, for me as a biodynamic farmer, I have to realize that everything you can see and everything that you cannot see is all connected. So we're talking about the energies that come in from outside of this little orb we live on, from the moon, from the sun. Now you feel the sun, we all do. And you're aware of the moon. You know, on a full moon, I don't sleep very well. There's just too much energy going on. But we're not only with those. We've got all the constellations outside of our solar system that have a dramatic effect on us. So most of us not even aware of it. How many of you sleep under the stars every night? You used to. And how good did it feel? How much did you feel connected to the whole of this beautiful being that we live on? Now we live in a house, we go in, flick the light on. Maybe if you've got one of those idiot boxes, just sticks that on and it yaks and news. But most of us don't live under the stars anymore. We become disconnected. We become very mechanical, and then we lose our intuitiveness, because our intuitiveness is fed to us through the wholeness. So before we get too carried away, there is something in here that I want you to see. My job as an educator is not to judge people for what they do. I trained in chemical farming, spent 5 years in university, and I learned how to kill everything. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. What I'm saying is that we need to understand these people who are in chemical farming, is that that's what they know. These are the people who are doing the best they know how with what they've learned through generations. Do we want them to change if we're an organic farmer or people? Maybe you do. Some people do. Some people say, I don't care, as long as the food's cheap. We want to help them as much as anybody else, and not to shun them because they do something different from us. So this tool for me is a constant reminder. It doesn't matter who the person is, they are being on a journey, and if I can help them, I'll do everything I can. That reminds me. So something that's really important for us to have, in order to be able to do this, and do it really well, is your partner or your family. And this is where I see farming families falling apart, because they don't have the space where they can feel safe enough to to express themselves without being judged. Farmers' sons don't feel they have the space where they can ask their father that they would like to start taking over and implementing some of the ideas they have. A lot of them say, bugger off. When I'm in a box, you can do what the bloody hell you like. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong or right either, but what that does is it stops progression, stops succession. And so it's really important, if we want to take this regeneration on, we have to think about the generations that come and the part that they will play, and not to hold the space to ourselves or from our partners, because our partners are absolutely critical in our well-being. Without Gwen, I would be hardly anybody. Because I know that we're working together to do something of greatness, but I can't do it on my own. And she backs me with whatever I do. So she is really important to me. Together we can be creative. When we're on our own, we're only a small part of who we really are. So it's really important that you have an understanding the importance of your family and your partner when you're trying to build a system.
Can I just add one thing, Adam?
Yeah.
Family doesn't have to be blood family.
Yeah. No, family is the human race. In order to build, for the human race to be able to work as a family, it comes with that attitude. So a good attitude will take you a long way, bad attitude will take you nowhere. And every day we're going to be challenged. We're going to be challenged because we're here on an experiential journey. That's what life is about. And we're going to have people who will confront us. We're going to have a tractor who will confront us. And it's only to help us see more of who we are. You can neither love nor hate something in another because it's merely a reflection of yourself. When you can see that and acknowledge that and take responsibility, because everything that happens to you is your own creation. Everything. In some way you create it. When you realize that and take responsibility for that, you can change everything. That's a really powerful thing. And every day, we've started it, every day we start with, what are 3 things you're grateful for today? It's amazing how powerful that is, because it gets you actually to really think about all the things that you have that you took for granted. And when you can do that, you start to realize how abundant your life is already. And how much you can use that to be creative so that you can create a future that's worth living for generations to come. Of course, and John knows this one really well, is health. It is up to us to look after ourselves. It is not up to anybody else. It is us to take responsibility of what we put in our mouths. It's up to us to take the responsibility that when I'm healthy and I'm doing well, everyone around me benefits from my good health. When I'm not, everyone is also not benefiting, the opposite of our bad health. It's our responsibility, nobody else's. So this is, to me, is one of, it's only little, but this is one of the fundamentals of a sound system, is having it healthy. Not only ourselves, but our family, our animals, and of course our soil. When everything is in health, we have wealth. The other side of things that we have to think about is that not everything goes perfectly every day, and we have what we call failure. I don't actually look at failure as that. I look at it as a learning experience. You may not like the body you're given in this time around. You might think some of the things that you have to go through are stupid and crazy, but they are yours right now. What do you make of them? Do you create in the positive, or do you like to create in the negative? You know, when something goes wrong, I kind of get excited. Everyone thinks I'm a bit crazy, And the reason being is because when it goes wrong, I am really challenged. If it all goes well and everything is sweet, I'm bored and then I'm troubled. For me, it's when it goes wrong is I get really challenged on looking at, okay, I've got to dig deep here because something's happened and I don't know why. But I know that I can work it out. And I'm sure I've got somebody I can talk to who can give me a hint. And when you do that and you resolve the issue, because the problem and the solution are right next to each other all the time anyway. When you resolve that, wow, does that feel good? Not only does it feel good, you have grown as a being. You are now endowed with knowledge and wisdom that you created. Now how good does that sound? Every day you can do this. You're confronted by something and you overcome it. That is you taking your power back. Now I don't know about you, in the farming world at the moment, most farmers have given away all their power. Not only have they given away their power, they've given themselves over to being in debt. They're price takers, not price makers. The regenerative movement is about rebuilding not only the soil, but farmers to be able to be out there standing in their field. There's a double meaning in that. We want farmers to be able to be creative. We want farmers to be able to think outside the square. We don't want them reliant on inputs coming in, dependent on chemical companies or multinationals. We want them to be resilient and independent and able to be creative and create a future that's worth living for many generations of these families. So failure is only the next doorway to greatness. Your greatness. Your ability to create something that you never knew could exist or you could build. That's the possibility. But it's really hard to do that on your own. And that's why we need to create communities. We used to have farming communities. We were driving here. There's a research station in Walkerman that used to have 36 people working there. I think last time I was there, there's only 4 working there. In order for our land to be rebuilt, we need to have people there who come from the right thinking. And how do we create that? We create that with communities where we encourage people to work together and to help educate each other from our own experiences, how that we can create a better place. It's very hard to do it on your own. We used to have very small farms that were highly productive and looked after a whole family. They could make a living off 5 acres of potatoes. Now they can make a living off 50 acres of potatoes. Something has gone awry here. Something is not working. And it's up to us to look at it. How can we, as a community, help those and help ourselves to build a better place? That's what our job is. How do we create that? By learning that we all together are very powerful. It's not to say we're not powerful on our own, but when we come together, we have the most amazing capacity to be able to create things. So, how do we look at this? So we have lots of modalities in the farming world that are not classified as mainstream in the Western world. And did you know that in agriculture on the world scale, 30% of the food is grown by chemical farming. 70% is grown on 3 acres or less.
Yeah, did not know that.
No, because all we see is what we have in our backyard.
Yeah.
We don't realise that the majority of the world does not live like we do. So you think about that. 70% of the world's food is grown on 3 acres or less, using 30% of the energy that's used in agriculture. That means 70% of the energy is only growing 30%. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is right or wrong. It's just to look at that and go, can we not do better than this? Can we come together? Can we not as a community? Farmers need community because they need the support. They need the encouragement. They don't want to be out there on their own doing what they're doing because most of them know it's not the right thing, but it's the only thing they know. It's the only thing they know will keep the bank off their back next month. So, having come out of university with all this knowledge how to kill everything, I realized that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to study life, and so I traveled around the world quite a bit, learning from everyone I could. And then I came home, my father said to me, "Do you want to be partners on the farm?" I said, "Yeah, but I ain't using chemicals. I've seen that that is not the way." And so I went to become a biodynamic grower. And I was very lucky that I ended up lucky or well managed, could be both. I ended up on a plane to India, spent a month traveling around South India with Peter Proctor, who was one of our great biodynamic elders. And I came back here excited and knew that this was a possibility. And I kind of got caught up thinking, this was the only way, this is it. What I've also come to learn is, this is just another tool in my toolbox. And so then, since then, I've looked into Centropics. How do we create forests again? How do we create agriculture with forests? How can we grow in this paddock here 8 different income streams? Not just cane or whatever you're going to grow, but 8 income streams: fruit, nuts, timber, fiber, fodder, floral, all in one place, all stacked on top of each other, all harvesting free energy from the sun, pumping carbon into our ground. That's what Centropics is about. It's creating food forests on a large scale. So I thought, yeah, that's a great tool to have because I can make my biodynamics work with Centropics, and it works really well. But there's some other people around the world who've been doing amazing things as well. We have KNF, Korean Natural Farming. They've been doing this for over 5,000 years.
What was the first word you said?
Korean Natural Farming. Now there's another one that goes with it, and that's called Jadam. This is father, this is son. So the son has come along and he's looked at the way his father did it and gone, hey, I've got some new ideas. I've got some ways that we can make this easier. Both of these are fantastic. This might be the one you love. So that's a tool that you have in your toolbox. Well, this one might be good. No, I don't have the time. The sun's made it quicker and easier. I'll do that one. Both are great tools to have because they look at natural ways of getting fertility in your paddock. You do not have to go to a multinational and buy a whole lot of ingredients in order to put on your ground. You can actually make them all yourself. So this is empowering people. This gives them the tools that they can use to be able to create their own fertility, their own wealth, not relying on somebody else. Another one we have you heard of natural sequence farming? Have you heard of Peter Andrews? Peter Andrews is another guy who was shunned because he had these crazy ideas, but he had studied the landscape, and his son is now taking over. And they've studied how the landscapes work and form, and how you can utilize that knowledge in order to be able to create a landscape that's resilient, how you can hold the water in your landscape. When it rains, it doesn't all just run off and disappear. You can actually hold it in your landscape so that it keeps going. It's like a big sponge that your plants and we can tap into for months after the rain is gone. Now, all of us know up here is that we get a big wet season, suddenly it's all gone. I know you guys up here get a lot more where we are. We're at the other end of the table. And we haven't really seen much rain, we could talk about rain, since May. So we expect that. We expect we're going to have, and we get frost. You know, this morning we were in tracky pants and flannel shirts. It's kind of crazy, and it's just a couple of hours away. But that's the beauty of where we live. We live in the most diverse corner of the world. As I said, I've been around most of the world, and it takes really hard to beat what we have here in this far north Queensland. The diversity of landscape, the diversity of climate is just unbelievable. Peter Andrews recognized that. He recognized the qualities of where you live and how you can enhance that. So natural sequence farming is another tool that you can have in your toolbox that would help you to make your land more resilient. Now we need to build resilience into our landscape because we have no idea what the weather patterns are doing. We need to build that in. Another great tool. Some of you, of course, will have heard of this one, permaculture, permanent agriculture. This is very similar in many ways to syntropics. It's again creating food forests. And this is generally done on a smaller scale, and it's not done in straight lines. So syntropics is quite often done in straight lines because the use of machinery is much easier when you've got straight lines. This is to take it to those 3-acre people. This is where you can create a beautiful landscape. There's curves and bends, ponds, swales, food forests. Creating abundance on anywhere you possibly can find a piece of ground. This was created here by Bill Morrison. So this is another thing, a way of looking, how do we create abundance, especially for our family? Because if you're going to grow food, the first thing you have to think about is food security for your family. That is number one. You cannot take it out of there if you haven't created food security for your family. How can we take this into a larger scale? So no-till, minimum till. We're starting to learn how important it is not to turn the soil upside down with a plow. They knew this back in the 30s in America, where they had the Dust Bowl years. That was created by the plow. Now the plow is not a bad tool. Same as a gun, it's not a bad tool. It depends on the hand that controls it. It's got to be used wisely and carefully and in timing with when the soil is ready to receive it. Now that worked pretty well when it was pulled by a horse, because the horse couldn't pull it unless the soil said, hey, you're not plowing me today. Now we've got 250, 300, 400, 500 horsepower tractors that will plow the bitumen, which means we don't think about the soil anymore. It's like, I've got to get that all plowed today. It's not whether the soil's ready to do it, we're just going to go in and we're going to do it. But if we went in there and was not turn the soil upside down and did zero-till or minimum till, we might save the ecology that's been growing in there, rather than turning it on its head, drying it out, frying it in the sun. Just coming here today, I've seen paddocks that have been plowed up, just bare soil. Now we talk about climate change and we talk about the carbon issue. The biggest issue is that we have bare soil. Soil should never be bare. What happens if we leave bare soil? What does nature do with it? Covers it over. Yeah, well, it takes it away in a storm, but it'll cover it over with weeds. Weeds. They are a great tool. They're a great tool because they clear up the mess we make. They cover the soil up where we've left it bare. And we hate the weeds.
We love the weeds.
Well, that's good. But most people don't. They want to spray them. Especially if you've got them in your crop. But if you've got weeds growing in your crop, the weeds are trying to tell you that this is good for weeds to grow in. And the plants that you are growing are later successional plants, which means they need much more life in your soil than you have. That's why the weeds are growing. They're trying to build the soil. They're trying to return it to life. So the weeds are good. They're the messengers to tell you where you're at with your soil. If you learn how to read the weeds, you can then actually work with them, understanding how and why they're there, and what you can do in order for them not to be there. And that goes back to minimum till and zero till, where every time we turn the soil over and open up the soil, we stir up all the weed seeds to start growing again. So weeds are not an enemy. They're a savior. They're a messenger telling you, if you start to learn how to read your weeds, they'll tell you exactly what your soil needs. Need more calcium, need more phosphorus, too compacted, whatever. Just read the messages. But you've got to learn how to do that. So you got this tool in your toolbox to learn how to do it. You know where you can learn all this? Nowadays, it's not just in books. It's on YouTube. Everywhere, everything you want to know, I bet it's on a YouTube. And someone else is doing it and they're very excited and they want to tell you all about it. That's my toolbox. What's your toolbox? Thank you.